Hi guys, Nika here with a short guide on how to play balanced Druid in Mythic Plus. I'm gonna talk about the basics, stats, talents, gear and more, so you can pull these numbers in a dungeon.
That's a lot of damage!
So your journey starts. You level the Druid to 80 and chose balance. Great pick. But what now? First thing you will notice is that you have a resource called Astral Power. Our main generators, or also fillers of Astral Power, are Wrath, which is our nature single target damage spell, and our AoE damage spell, which is arcane, called Starfire, which deals splash damage. Other spells also generate astral power, like our dots, Moonfire and Sunfire, Fury of Elune, and passives in our talent tree. As you can see in the video, I use my Wrath, my dots, and my Starfire to generate astral power. And of course, we also need some spells to spend our astral power on. These two spenders are called Star Surge for single target and Starfall for AoE. Starfall is a 45-yard AoE dot around it. As you can see in the video, you see that Star Surge is just a single target hitting ability, and that Starfall is in a 45 radius around my character even when I move. Now let's get into the Eclipse system. Eclipse is the core mechanic of balanced Druid, alternating between two phases that are triggered by our fillers. 2 times Starfire will bring us in Solar Eclipse, and 2 times Wrath will bring us in Lunar Eclipse. You can only be in one eclipse at a time unless you are in your cooldowns. So firstly, Solar Eclipse. We cast 2 times Starfire and then our filler Wrath, because Solar Eclipse buffs our nature spells by 15% and Wrath by 60%. For Lunar Eclipse we cast 2 times Wrath and then our filler Starfire, because in this eclipse our arcane damage is buffed by 15% and Starfire deals 60% more damage to nearby enemies, because remember, Starfire splashes to multiple enemies when cast. And during your cooldowns you are in both eclipses at the same time. In the videos just now you saw me apply dots. We have 2 main dots called Sunfire on the left and Moonfire on the right. They let us do more nature or arcane damage to the target. This depends on how much mastery you have, and that's why mastery is also an important stat for us. It is important with dots that you always reapply the dot within the pandemic window. But what does this mean? This means that if a dot is at least 30% of its full duration, refreshing it during this time will add this extra duration to the dot, ensuring you don't lose potential damage. As you can see in the video right here, my weak aura lights up the dot whenever it's in the pandemic window, and then I reapply it and you see that the extra duration will be added so I don't lose any potential damage. But what does this all mean? I've been talking a lot about nature and arcane spells. However, Starfall and Star Surge are astral spells. Well, astral damage is the combination of nature and arcane. So Starfall and Star Surge both benefit equally from solar and lunar eclipse. So what does this mean when you are in your cooldowns? Well, your astral spells will get a multiplier because they benefit from both the eclipses, while your nature and your arcane spells will only benefit from one eclipse. Now that we've covered the basics, we can look at our stats. Haste Mastery are our most important stats. For AoE, Haste gets more importance than Mastery. The only thing that I want to highlight with these lists is they are not saying you need to stack your character full with Haste Mastery gear. Stats have diminishing returns, so at a certain point the stat loses value. This is why I always recommend to sim your character. Also think about certain scenarios. Maybe you want some more verse when you play Mythic Plus, because it makes you also take less damage. So these things always need to be taken into consideration when you choose your stats. Now we can talk about the fun part. Talents. I'm gonna talk about only Mythic Plus talents, because questions that I get often is why do I do no damage, or why is my damage so bad compared to other classes? First thing that's important with balanced gameplay is that we need time to set. If you play low keys, for now I'll take 12 and below as a mark, your time to set a proper damage is very low. This is why I recommend Keeper of the Grove for lower keys, and for 13 and above you can play Elune's Chosen And always keep in mind that it also depends on what classes you have in your group. If you play with a Shadow Priest, for example, they also need time to set up. So maybe if you play at 12, then you can still play with Elune's Chosen. If you have a Red Paladin or a Devastation Evoker in your group, just play with Keeper of the Grove because they blast. First, I'm gonna talk about the low-key builds. Keeper of the Grove. This hero talent tree is all about your little trends that are called Force of Nature. Opener will go as follows. You dot the boss, then you put your trends down. These trends will give you a buff called Dream Burst, which has 3 stacks. These stacks implode when a wrath hits the target. So it will not implode when you cast it, only when your wrath hits the boss. After you put your trends down, you press your cooldown, Incarn, and you proceed with your normal rotation. Wrath to fill and Star Search to spend. Before I start to talk about the AoE opener from Keeper, it is important to notice that whenever you are dotting the pack, your trends also dot with Moonfire. This is the case in single target, so if you have your trends down, they dot the boss for you, then you can spend that global on something else. So for the AoE rotation of Keeper, it depends on how much targets there are, but whenever the tank is gathering, you just dot, you put your trends down. They also dot the mobs for you. You go in your cooldowns and then you spend your Astral Power on Starfall because it's AoE, and you use Starfire as your filler. As said before, Keeper of the Grove is a winner in low keys because our trends also dot mobs for us, so this leads to us not spam dotting everything, so we can go into our cooldowns faster, which is preferable in low keys, and start our burst. Next, we're gonna talk about Elune's Chosen. What's important to notice is that instead of the trends, Force of Nature, we play with a Warrior of Elune, which makes our next 3 Starfires an instant cast and generate 30% increased Astral Power. With this hero talent, Starfire deals 160% increased damage to its primary target, but we no longer trigger Solar Eclipse, so we only switch into Lunar Eclipse, which makes the rotation a little bit more easy because we don't need to decide in what kind of eclipse we're going. For Elune's Chosen, you start the exact same way in your single target opener as Keeper of the Grove. So you dot the boss, you go into your cooldowns, you press your Fury of Elune, you consume your procs, your Nature's Grace procs, and then you use Warrior of Elune and just fill with Starfire, and you spend on Star Search. Then you go into Lunar Eclipse because that's the only eclipse we can go into with these hero talents, and then you just proceed the normal rotation. It's important to notice that with Elune's Chosen, whenever you press your cooldowns, you are still in Solar Eclipse, but you don't use Wrath, you use Starfire. For Elune's Chosen AoE rotation is you start the same way again, you dot all the targets, you just don't have trends that dot for you this time. Then you go into your cooldowns, Fury of Elune, you want to consume your Nature's Grace stacks before you use Warrior of Elune, and then you just use your filler, Starfire, and your spender, Starfall. Now a short summary of what we've talked about. For low keys, I recommend Keeper of the Grove. The trans dot for us, it's easier setup, faster cooldowns, faster blast. High keys, however, we are the dot bot. We play Elune's Chosen, we need to single targetly dot everything, and it is the highest damage output, but exactly as I was saying, we need the time to properly set it up. In low keys we don't have that time, other classes blast more, so that's why I do not recommend this build if you do low keys. Because we talked about different hero talents, I also wanted to show you guys when to go in what eclipse. For Keeper on single target and 2 targets, you go into Solar Eclipse, so you empower your Wrath, and on single target you spend of course your Astral Power on Star Search, but on 2 targets it's a decision making thing. You still go into Solar Eclipse, but is there a prio damage target or does one target have to die fast? You Star Search, Swords. 1 otherwise you just use Starfall. In 3+ targets you go into Lunar Eclipse and spend Astral Power on Starfall and use Starfire as your filler. For Elunes chosen it's a bit more easy. You only go into Lunar Eclipse, so you will use Starfire on every target count, and on single target of course Star Surge. On 2 targets it's a decision making, and on 3+ targets you Starfall. Both talent builds will be linked below. So let's get into the gear section. For gear I just wanted to show a few options. In Mythic Plus good trinkets drop from Priory and Dark Flame Clef. The Priory trinket is a 2-minute cooldown. Take that in mind because our cooldowns are 1 and 30 seconds. So in the raid drops House of Cards. This is a 1 minute and 30 second on use trinket, so it's easy to use with our cooldowns. And Moxie Jug is also a good trinket that gives us crit. The only thing that I want to say here is that I always want to advise to just sim your character to know what trinkets are gonna be the best for you. Hi guys, thank you for watching. I hope you guys learned something from the video. I kept the information really basic and didn't go into more details about certain buffs, but this will give you guys a beginning on how to start as a balanced druid. If you guys want me to also make a more in-depth guide, let me know in the comments below, and I would appreciate it a lot if you sub, and I'll see you guys next time.